Welcome to Stormlight Sundays, maybe for the last time ever, live on TikTok. Shane will be joining us here soon, and we'll be talking Szeth, time dilation, and Dalinar, oh my. It is spoilers for all of Wind and Truth, as well as the Cosmere. So, sit back, grab your favorite drink, and let's go! Try again. There we go. No. Uh-oh.
Hello.
Well, this is a new one. I can hear you, but I cannot see you.
You like pushed all the way to the side. I don't know.
Weird. Huh. It didn't do the automatic thing it normally does. So you can see me.
Well, sort of. I can see like the top of your head.
Super weird. And it doesn't even show you as a guest correctly. I'm going to try.
Do you want me to jump off and jump back on again?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
A brand new tech glitch. Goodness gracious. Hey everybody, Lord Lupe! We're gonna try that one more time. That was weird. Come on, TikTok. There we go. Much better. I don't know if they could see you, but I super could not. It was identical to when you're not on. It was very strange.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Like we've said before, it's not a TikTok live if we don't have a new tech glitch.
Yep.
How's it going?
Great. How's it going by you?
Pretty good. We had all the snow fun over the last few days. All sorts of edge dancery, sledding funness happening. Our driveway is about this slope.
Oh, gosh.
And so it is. I mean, we didn't have to drive anywhere, thankfully. I live in Tennessee. When we get 1 to 2 inches, everyone just agrees not to drive anywhere, because obviously it was great. My sister-in-law lives in Colorado, and we sent her a picture of our snow day where like all schools are closed, all courts are closed, everything's closed, and there's no snow on the ground yet. Because there will be snow at some point. Leo the Poet, welcome.
That was basically what happened here too in Baltimore. They were predicting like 6 to 8 inches, and I was like, I don't think it's gonna be. It was about 4 inches, I think, that we got, and yeah, everything is shut down. So.
Yeah, we ended up. They were saying 3 to 7. I'm told that where we are, it was about 3.5 or so, which is a lot for us. I mean, we've gone entire winters where we only got 3, so yeah. It's not.
You're much further south. You're much further south than I am. So
just a hair.
Yeah, we still don't get too much. I think because we're maybe too close to the water. Like we don't get a ton of snow. Although we have in the past, like we've gotten like 3 feet, 5 feet, but that's a long time ago.
Yeah,
hasn't been like that in a while.
That makes sense. Gosh, I can't even fathom 3 to 5 feet of snow.
Yeah, I mean the 5 feet was the craziest because I think it wasn't all one snow. It was like we got 3 feet and then we got an additional 2 feet. But I remember just like walking out of the house and having like a wall of snow, like taller than, like almost as tall as I was,
Yeah.
Just it was really pretty incredible. And when we got I actually when I was younger, I lived in Arizona, and so when we first moved here, it was like pretty short after we moved to the East Coast that we got like 3 feet of snow, and my poor brother, who had never seen snow before, was just not happy, but it was pretty cute.
I mean, it's very different, and particularly if you can't conceptualize the joy that comes with it. It's like, this is awful. Like it's painful. It's cold. I have to be hot with my clothing so that I'm not freezing to death. Like it's.
Yeah. And he was like 3 years old, and we had been like, he'd never seen snow before. I had, because I lived all over the place, but so we kept saying to him like, it's going to snow. And he was like so excited for it. But then when it actually came down to it, he was a lot less excited. So now Leo the Poet has a husky, and they are so cute, and so I'm glad that he's enjoying, or she's enjoying, the snow.
I grew up with my grandmother had a husky, and they're gorgeous.
We went to my father's from California, so we go out there a bit, and we were staying by somebody who had a husky in LA, and I said to them, I was like, doesn't it bother him? Like, isn't it horrible? And they were like, actually, no, like it doesn't, really bother them. And I was like, okay, but it seemed pretty happy.
It's awesome. Yeah, the biggest thing is just let them run because they need to move. I
Yeah,
mean, they were bred to pull things long, long, long distances.
yeah.
Is that a wolfhound, Zach? As famously, obviously, would just be a wolf. Mr. Brandon Sanderson and his wolfhounds.
Wolfhound.
Mm. Axehound says Torchman228. Yeah, Axehound, I will admit, is one of my claims to fame for Aphantasia because I did not absorb any of the words that would tell me that this is a crab insect thing that they
Me
just
too.
call a hound.
It's for me the word hound was what stuck in my head, and so I just assumed it meant dog. I had no like
Yeah,
concept. It wasn't until like the dog and the dragon that I was like, oh, they don't have dogs? Okay. Like it just
yeah,
never entered my head.
yeah. I forget. I think somebody finally showed me the Axehound drawing. I mean, I think if I wasn't an audio listener, it would have happened faster because in the book there's a picture of an
Right.
Axehound, and so it's like, oh, cool, Axehound, nice. Obviously not a dog. We're talking about or early wakings. You're safe. My wife is still on day 2, so she's like, I don't want to. I can't hear anything. Speaking of early illustrations, have you seen the glow up for the Voidbringer / Chasm Fiend illustration for Way of Kings?
No, like it's on. What is it on?
So I'm told it's in. Let me see if I can find it. I was told that for the leather-bound Way of Kings, they did a new illustration of the. It's like what Shallan's notes that Yasna has, where it's like a chasm fiend / Voidbringer attacking a city. Like it was probably a Thunderclast, right? For real, but they don't know what Thunderclasts are yet, so they couldn't talk about it that way. Illustrations. Map, Shellbark, Axehounds. I can show off the.
Did you also get the Words of Radiance leatherbound?
Yeah. So, like, I mean, that's your Axehound, right? Which is very clearly not a dog. like if I'd been reading in physical,
You know what
it
that reminds
definitely
me
would
of?
have
It
been
reminds
there.
me of the line from Ant Man at the end of Ant Man where he says, "That's one messed up looking dog." Remember that?
Yes. Oh
Dragon
man.
ants.
This is part 1. Oh, this is part 2. Okay. I was like, why are the illustrations not showing up? That makes sense. I need to use this more often. It is gorgeous. Sorry, I just saw the map. Oh, sky eels, chills. Okay, is this it?
Leo the poet. I think
Yeah.
you can get the weather. You can get the leatherbounds. At least you can get way. I think you can get Way of Kings leatherbound on the website. Ooh.
Probably. So like this is the Great Shell illustration / chasm fiend / whatever. It says reproduction of a woodblock print image that some scholars date to a few generations after Ari Hetiam, described as a depiction of a Voidbringer, right? And in the original, it literally like is the I don't know. It's like the we have. Mom, can we have Jenga? No, we have Jenga at home. Mom, can we have a Great Shell? No, we have Great Shell at home. Like if you Google it, it looks so much. Oh, my phone. My phone has the original. There we go. Look at this. It almost was planned and all came together, but not quite. Um, Somebody pointed it out on Reddit, and I went, "Whoa, that is a sizable art difference. Let's see. Which was surprising because I was like, I didn't think they updated any of the art, but apparently they did. 460. The arches are also like when we get to book 10 of the Leatherbounds, which will be like thousands of dollars later, like the arches are even more gorgeous.
Oh yeah,
so I feel like watching those deteriorate is going to be terrifying.
You think they'll do that in the Leatherbound?
I would think so, right? Like you'd want it to. I don't know.
Yeah,
oh, I've not. Apparently, I've clearly not read these. They have like blue text for some of the pieces.
Yeah, they have. I just got my first Leatherbound. I got the Warbreaker one, and it has that. Also has like some purple text, which is pretty cool.
So cool.
Lord Loopy, I feel ya. I feel ya. I'm telling you, it's been a rough. This past, he's talking about he can't get into anything reading. Although, aren't you starting Red Rising? Like you are at the.
It's in like a month, so he's got too much time on his hands. Is what.
I was gonna say, I was like, you're at the threshold of brilliance. Like, just wait till you get into Red Rising. But yeah, it's been a rough year. I weep for the state of publishing. Seriously. I DNF'd a book yesterday after like 30 pages. I was like, I can't do this anymore.
I feel that. I really liked, I did Rendezvous with Rama. It's a sci-fi book here recently. That one was really good. It's an Arthur C. Clarke book where humanity discovers this big object hurtling towards the solar system, and they have to go explore it. And it's just like fun, cool space exploration stuff. It's a good little book. Technically, it's part of a series, but it can also just stand alone, which I kind of needed at this stage.
Yeah. Zach, I also did not care for Shadow of the Gods, and I loved Malice. I loved the whole Faithful and the Fallen series, but I could not get into Shadow of the Gods either. But I actually did a whole video today on my stories of all the books you should read after the Cosmere, so you can check that out. There's some, there's good stuff out there. Also, I just wanted to mention this guy. We saw your question. We're gonna definitely get to it. Don't worry. We're just waiting, I think, for. We usually like to do like a little bit of like preliminary schmoozing.
Yeah. Plus, I'm frantically trying to make myself not look crazy by showing this off. So instead, I'm looking crazy in this way.
Leo the Poet. I haven't read Circe. I'm not a huge fan of Greek retellings, to be honest. Contrary to my obsession with epic, I'm not a really big
except for
I know.
Which I finished, by the way. We can talk about that in a minute.
We should talk about that. But in general, like I'm not a huge like retellings type of reader.
Interesting.
They're not annoying questions, this guy. We love questions. Don't feel.
We love questions.
Yeah, don't be embarrassed.
Oh, okay. Shandel, I was sitting over here because I'm trying to find this thing, so I'm not looking super close. I'm like, who is the person? Why does she keep calling him this guy? We can use his username. It's okay. Oh, I get it. I understand now. That's fair. Okay, well, why does the website hate me? No, this is so dumb. Okay, Coppermind. The Coppermind. See, this is where I should have gone. The Coppermind has the original and the updated, right? Boom, boom. Oh gosh, and of course it's like super dark. But like this is the original.
Yeah, I can't see anything. Just looks like a black screen.
Looks like a black screen. Oh, I can see it on my side. Maybe they can see it. Who knows? Who does? It is like the darkest picture I've ever seen. Here. I'm committed to the bit at this point.
Okay, I can see it like a little bit.
Yeah, but it looks not nearly as epic as the updated. The updated looks amazing. Oh my goodness. How long did your first read of Wind and Truth take? I think it was like 4 or 5 days. I was done by Tuesday. Now I guess if you include part one and part two, it took us months.
Yeah, I think I was finished by Monday night. I finished right before you, but we were basically at the same
I was
time.
like, I gotta finish. We gotta talk about it. I gotta know what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I basically did nothing except for read until I finished.
Yeah. I had to do things like during the day, and that was really frustrating. So I'm like, I just want to read. And so then I'd start at, I don't know, 10 o'clock, and then I would be able to stop till like 3 or 4. I was telling my wife, I was just like, okay, I can only do this because this happens like once every 3 to 4 years. If I was living this kind of life all the time, would not be bueno.
Yeah, exactly. There's like something about Stormlight that just has like this importance. I don't really like. I wouldn't do this for other books, but this was
Oh,
like I had to. I was also kind of worried about like what I might see because there were people who were going around spoiling things, which is
oh yeah.
sucks. But I really wanted to make sure that I finished.
Zach says, my daughter kept pestering me with things like food and attention needs.
Oh.
Yeah, Torchman228 took a big break when they said, outwalked Elokar.
Yeah. Actually, so my mom just finished like last week. And so we were talking about it, and she also was very mixed on the whole Gavinor champion thing. But she loved it too. She really enjoyed it. The book.
Yeah, we just had someone ask if it's spoiler free. I would not call this spoiler free. It's just not directed spoiler discussion just yet. We're kind of hitting a bunch of different pieces.
I hope I didn't just spoil that for you.
Hey, journey before destination, right?
Mm-hmm.
That actually was one of my favorite sentences, because if you stopped there, it's a really rough sentence, because if you stop there and then you try to talk with somebody about the champion and you're like, oh, I know who the champion is now, and they're like, oh yeah, what did you think about it being, that could really throw you for a loop. Yeah, John S., I agree. I'm tickled. I think that's the correct word. I'm not happy that we were right about Gav time traveling through dilation into the future. But I am pleased that we were able to get that right.
No, my mother thought it was going to be Renarin. She kept saying, she's like, it's going to be Renarin. She was like, why? She's like, I just don't want it to be Renarin. And I was like, okay. And she kind of
That's like one of the only people I'd heard nothing about in terms of it being Renarin. So that's really interesting.
I think like as she got towards the end and it starts getting into some of the Relaine Renarin stuff in terms of like them realizing about Bado Mishram and what, like, especially Relaine has some grudges. And I think that she thought that Relaine was going to influence him to maybe turn against Dalinar. But I was like, I kept saying to her, I was like, but does that make sense? Like, does that seem like Renarin's like type? I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, Dalinar would have had to have not completed his arc. I can see a world where his sons have to stand up to him and be like, no, you're not the right, whatever. But we weren't going in that direction. We were going in the Dalinar figures things out direction.
Yeah, I still think that we talked about last week where Dalinar being the champion, both champions would have been probably the most interesting route to go, like the Blackthorn versus Dalinar, but
yeah,
he didn't ask me, so.
No. Goodness.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it, Leo the Poet. He pulled a Vin, sort of like
yes. Yeah.
Find the other way out.
Yeah. The fourth option, after he'd found the third option of taking up Honor and just killing him, it's like, wait, no, I can't do that either, because that'll also like ruin things. Though ironically, that means we got really close to the other theory that I really was a fan of, which is everybody leaves Roshar so that we can then take care of Odium. Because if you have everyone leave, then you can kill Odium without worrying about killing everybody else. It's like, everybody jump into Shadesmar real quick, and then I can take out Odium, and then we're all good, and then it's all happy.
Well, kind of on that vein, what is happening with all the people like in Phelan? Because there's no sun anymore. Like, are they?
Oh,
How do
sure.
they? How are they
Yeah.
surviving? Do we know?
Yeah. No. I presumably there's enough heat to keep you alive, but it's like a dreariness, I would
But you still
presume.
need sunlight, I think.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, somebody else brought up the good point of no high storms. Does that mean no creme? Like, how is, because creme was like a really big, they made pottery, it prevented erosion of the continent. Um, a lot of interesting options there.
Hmm. It seems like you could do without pottery, but I don't know if you could do without sunlight. Like, I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah, nonstop rain killing all the plants. I mean, it does seem to be a lot of those death rattles came true in the perpetual rain, but no stormlight. Um, Slight parentheses on whether Odium Retribution was able to pull them out of those perfect gemstones that the Spren had, but who knows? I mean, we got nothing from the Spren's perspective about this all happening, right? It was only
Right.
the human side. So, oh, John S. got by autocorrect? Maybe Leo the Poet got by autocorrect. I can't tell. Kremlings with a K.
Should we go back to this guy's question? Because I just feel bad that we.
Oh, sure. I don't think I ever got far. I kept trying to go back to find it.
Okay, I think. Hold on.
Uh,
Okay, I found it. So he says, Alethi lost someone forfeit land on killing a wit. Odium killed wit. Does he have to forfeit Alethkar? I think we've discussed this, but we can go back to it also.
yeah, I'm really a big fan of this idea. Even more so because it doesn't seem like it's something that Hoyd planned. I think I'm still really sad about all the 4D chess I wanted Hoyd to have been doing at the end of Rhythm of War. And then Brandon kind of went, no, he just got tricked. Like, he got outmatched and it happened. And this feels like it's the same kind of thing where, like, oh, actually, Hoyd did this, like, 4D chess move by getting Taravangian to kill him. So I don't know whether Brandon does it or not, I think is the big thing. But it's definitely, like, as I would interpret it, you're allowed to kill the King's Wit, but you forfeit land and title, and he killed the King's Wit. And so there goes land and title. I've seen people throw the monkey wrench in of, well, Yasna broke up with him, so he wasn't the wit anymore. But I would point out, you don't have to be sexually in a relationship with the wit for them to still be the wit. Nothing about the letter indicates that he's not going to be wit anymore. It's just he's not going to be in a relationship with Yasna anymore. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I think it's there.
yeah. I'd agree with that. I mean, I think I don't know. Can't Odium just make his own laws? He's the god of the world. Like, I'm not sure if that's going to be where it goes. Although it'll be interesting if it does. I think honestly, Brandon really wanted to shock everyone with the ending, and like killing off Wit and what he does to Yasna is a good way of shocking the audience. I think that's what was happening there.
Yeah.
I just don't think there's anything other than that.
Yeah. Well, it's also a bit of a Chekhov's payoff situation where, like, Hoyt has told us since book one, if they find out that I'm here, I'm dead, right? And as soon as he was found and not under the protection of a promise, he was dead. So I think it's one of those things where it's like, it makes sense. Will Brandon use an obscure law 20 years from now to be like, hey, bah? Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
The fact that he honors Azir's like winning of the seat seems to indicate that there is some amount of retribution saying, hey, yeah, I gotta honor the law, I gotta honor the promise.
Yeah, they're clear. Like the shards are clearly bound in some way. Like, but then we don't really know all of it. Like, we don't really know exactly how all that works. Like, promises and oaths and stuff like that. It's not totally clear how what shards can or cannot do. Even like the idea that like they can't attack each other is sort of not totally clear. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, even like where he even the whole duel with Yasna, the whole not duel, the whole debate with Yasna,
Yeah.
he's like doing it out of this like honorable thing of like, I'm going to debate you and then win. But then he comes to her and he's like, nah, I was going to take it anyway. Like
Yeah.
he had all the ships waiting. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, remember, honorable for honor's perspective only means I didn't break my promise. So even if I'm gonna like, cause Sadius is functionally honorable per honor's rules because he promises to help Dalinar. He does help Dalinar. He decides that it's the correct time to withdraw, and he does. He never promised not to withdraw, and
But
so this version of honor, it's
I was gonna
honorable.
say, like, it's like it depends on what you mean by honor. Like, it's certainly
Yes.
not like I think there's a difference between like what's like the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law type of thing, where it's like, yes,
Oh yeah.
I said I would help you, and I helped you, but it's certainly not honorable to leave somebody,
Yeah.
in the situation that Sadius did. So I don't know if we could call it like honorable necessarily, but yeah, this is sort of where like the I mean, this is in general the whole one of the big themes of Wind and Truth is that like honorable maybe wasn't all that honorable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And that's, I mean, people have talked about honor and odium getting reformed as justice, but I could easily see a world where honor gets reformed as just. And so it's not just what is honor, but what is just, what is the right thing to do, renamed anyway, right? Because there seems to be this idea that this little kid running around in the spiritual realm has the capacity to grow and change and learn, probably from Taravangian's hypocrisy and Taravangian's mistakes, and then maybe develop into a new shard version of Adonalsium, whether you rename it honor or not, whether you rename the shard, but better understand the intent to be, a Dalinar, a Kaladin, an Adolin, not Sadius.
I mean, I think the person that actually most embodies this is actually Nail. Like,
Mm,
what's really interesting about like his arguments with Kaladin is sort of like what we're talking about here, where it's you know that I can't be trusted, and so therefore I must follow the law exactly, and
yeah.
there's no wiggle room, and if the law is there, then that must mean that but he kind of then when Kaladin calls him on it, being then he says, well, I can decide what the law is,
Yeah.
and things like that. So I thought that part was really interesting as well, but it seems like that's sort of where it sort of seems like that's what is going on here a little bit with retribution, or with the idea of justice is sort of like, or with any of the shards. Actually, it's sort of like there's the good side and the bad side to each of these
Yeah.
attributes, and so yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes forth, where it goes.
Yeah.
um so
Yeah. I really like how Brandon has incorporated, it feels a little bit like ancient mythology, this idea of I can only touch you if you've given yourself up to me in some way, or if you've allowed me in, or you've dedicated yourself. So like he can do stuff with Moash because Moash is his, quote unquote. And then or unless I'm willing to expose myself to other shards, and then I could try to do something, but other shards would just come and rip me apart. I wanted to go back. Nathan said maybe they're using Warlight for the crops, like they were using Stormlight for crops. We were talking about Thalina though, and Thalina wouldn't have any access to Warlight. You'd only have Warlight at Urithiru. So Urithiru, yeah, should be able to grow crops in some way. Perhaps even the tower radiating the light rather than having to have it contained in gemstones. I don't know. That was a big thing they were worried about. Like at the beginning of Wind and Truth, they were saying, "Hey, we're going to run out of gemstones at some point because they're going to shatter from us using them." Hopefully, they got enough people. They were going to do like shells. They were going to raise shells for their gem hearts or whatever. So hopefully, they got enough of those up there to get a population going. But
I mean, even besides for that though, like sunlight itself provides, I mean, maybe not on Roshar, but like on Earth, sunlight
sure.
itself provides like very valuable, like actually a friend of
Vitamin
mine works,
D and all
yeah,
sorts
like
of
a
fun
friend of mine
stuff. Yeah.
works with the Navy, where she does like studies on sailors that have to go down into like these
Yeah.
submarines for like months at a time. You can get really sick if you don't have any if you don't see, or like miners, I think, have this problem as well. Like, people who work underground for months at a time, it's actually really detrimental. So if there's
Yeah.
no sunlight at all, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what they're doing, but I'm sure Brandon has thought about it. So
Yeah. I think there's also nothing that says there isn't some way. I mean, he could easily hand wave it to say, "Oh, the clouds don't block the beneficial stuff that comes from Roshar's sons, or
Hmm.
sun or whatever." So it's one of those
I guess
things
maybe,
where,
right. Maybe sort of like on Scadrial, where like the sun is, where the atmosphere is so full of ash, but
yeah,
somehow the people have adapted to survive. Like maybe that,
yeah.
or maybe a lot of people are going to die.
I mean, I think it's just Aesir that has the light all the time, or has normal, quote
Mhm.
unquote, normal light. Um, this guy says, "Do you have fourth moon theories?"
I don't know what you're talking. You have to like explain to me. Fourth moon? Is it? Did they
Oh,
mention that there's a fourth moon on Roshar?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The fourth moon is what fell into the Shattered Plains,
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. Okay.
and it seems to have happened before the gods came,
Oh,
and
that's right. Okay,
and
okay.
then the
I was so confused.
perpendicularity for Odium ends up there because it's like a constant. So maybe it's part of Braze. Maybe when Adonalcium shattered, something messed up, and now that moon fell into Roshar. Maybe. I think if I was going to put tinfoil hat on, I would say Valor and or not and or Valor or Reason hid themselves on Roshar and then eventually created the avatar Noadon and then left again to go into the spiritual realm to hide. But that's like super tinfoil, nothing that can be based on that other than we're introduced to the fourth moon in the same book. We're introduced to Reason, and we don't know where Reason is, and Noadon seems very Reason centric. So
This is way above my pay grade. I have no thoughts. I don't know. This is the kind of stuff that I really like. I have a hard time like crafting theories about this stuff. But
yeah,
it's interesting. It's all interesting.
it's one of those things where Brandon very clearly was like, all right, theorize. You
Yep.
got a decade or so before I'm going to tell you anything more.
7 years. 7 years.
Yeah. I said or so. I'm still keeping in my mind the 20 years until like book 8, 9, 10 ish. And that way I'm just like, oh, when I get him sooner, it'll be happy. And I'll be like, cool. Yeah. Awesome.
I know. I mean, I know Brandon said 7 years, but the likelihood of that happening, like of nothing happening between that time to put him off of his schedule, is like
Yeah.
zero.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I don't think Zach Alexander said. I think it's going to be like 5 years before we get any more Cosmere. I don't know if it's going to be full 5 years. I think the next thing is going to be the compilation of non-Cosmere stories, and then after
Mm-hmm.
that is White Sands.
Yeah. So in theory, I haven't
Oh,
heard a
also
good
Leo
update
the
on
Poet
White
said
Sand.
right. Also, Leo the Poet pointed out that we're going to get Secret Project 5 in at the end of 2025. Oh, we lost sound.
That's our Eyes of the Emberdark is already written. Um, so yeah, it'll be coming out. White Sand, I'm still not convinced he's actually going to finish that and publish it. I have my doubts, just because I think it's not a high priority, and so if he doesn't get it done, it's not a big deal. He can just kind of move on. And then he does seem to be. Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, like the whole like Silverlight is kind of. I mean, I haven't even read White Sands, but I sort of know about like some things from
Yeah.
just Cosmere osmosis. Like kind of important, isn't it, going forward? Like he at some point has to canonize it.
Yeah. Oh, he does definitely. It needs to happen. Just will it happen at this point is the question.
I wonder, like, are we going to get to the point in the Cosmere where there are some things that are sort of known by hardcore Cosmere fans, but everyone else is going, "How do you know this stuff?" Like, like Silverlight,
Mm.
or things like that. How do you
Oh, I
know?
think we're already there. Yeah, I mean the
Are we
grand
already there?
apparatus. If you were at Nexus or pay attention to the Wobs, you know that he's talked about the grand apparatus existing somewhere in the Cosmere. And if you weren't, you have no idea what that is, and no way to even begin to find out what it is. And I don't even know what it is. I just know it's a thing that exists.
Yeah.
um,
Or things like Frost. I mean, I know about Frost because I'm sort of Cosmere aware, like because
yeah.
I'm so much in the Cosmere world, but I know a lot of people who are like, who? Why? What are you talking
Mm-hmm.
about?
Yeah. December 2025, White Sand has a question mark next to it. So I will continue to put that in the someday. He doesn't have Isles of Emberdark in his projected schedule, which is kind of weird. Wait, no. Wait,
No, he
is
must have.
this? I'm so confused. This is this is last year's State of the Sanderson. I don't know. That's weird. Um, maybe he's not. Maybe he's not 100%. He says probably. So sometime this year for Kickstarter, but then people for regular publication sometime in
Uh,
2026. He doesn't know when it'll be mass market, so he
gotcha.
doesn't want to put it on there. Yeah, Braze is weird. Braze, Lord Loopy saying the grain apparatus theory could be the Rosharan system as a fabrial, as a design. I mean, something's going on there. It's got a metal that pulls an investiture at the core of Braze. Pretty similar to Canticle with the Sunlit Man. So, I don't know. Who knows?
Not me.
Yeah. But all that to say, and then what has he said here? He said for the trick for me is going to be like Mistborn and Elantris, how much of that he writes before he starts to publish.
Yeah. I mean, if he's planning on doing Stormlight 6 in 7 years, I mean, and he's also planning to
so
release
fast.
I mean, yeah, but and like okay, the thing is that like it was 4 years between Rhythm of War and Wind and Truth.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Which that means that he has to finish all of Mistborn Ghostbloods by within 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And have them all be published. Well, no, I guess he has to finish all of them in 3 years to start working on Stormlight 6.
Yep. Yep.
That's not a lot of time, Brandon.
Nope. Yeah, he's supposed to have them all published by December 2030. And 2028 is when the first of the Mistborn / Elantris are supposed to come out. So, man, that's a lot. That means 3 Dragonsteels in a row. It's going to be Mistborn, Ghostbloods 1, Ghostbloods 2, Ghostbloods 3. So that'll be interesting as well. We've never had a consistent theme year after year after year.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of Mistborn. I'm really hoping that I enjoy. I'm actually really looking forward to Mistborn Ghostbloods, but I think rather famously, I'm not the biggest fan of Era 2. I have controversially stated that I prefer Elantris over all of Mistborn Era 2. So but I think why I'm going to enjoy Ghostbloods more is because Brandon has said that it's going to be plotted out. It's going to be a little bit closer to Mistborn Era 1, whereas Mistborn Era 2 sort of started as like a passion project and then kind of just, yeah, exactly.
Mistborn Era 2, I will concede, has the problem of being like, all right, here's kind of 2 books that sort of go together, and here's 2 other books that kind of go together, and it's not really a trilogy, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And I can't really delve into a lot of the things you're really interested in because that's for Era 3, and yeah. We had 2 questions a little while back. One was, PP said, were you disappointed with the book? I was not in any way, shape, or form. Except that it could have been longer. More book, Brandon.
I mean, no, I wasn't disappointed by the book at all. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. I think, Zach Argyle posted his review of it today, and he put it really nicely, where he was like, it's not just because you can enjoy a book and not say that it's flawless. Like, there are definitely things about the book that I didn't love. But I think that also when you take just the entire scope of the Cosmere and what Wind and Truth was able to do with wrapping up just Stormlight while also introducing a whole new era for the Cosmere and just Stormlight in general, you have to say this is super impressive. I think that like different books work better or worse for different people. I'm not like Way of Kings is my least favorite Stormlight book, but for some people it's their absolute favorite. I think everyone's going to have their favorites, but I think if anybody walks out of Wind and Truth and says like it was terrible, I mean, all art is subjective, but I don't, I mean, you have to like at least appreciate what he has done here. Like, I think at the very, very least. That's not to say there was nothing that bothered us. Like, both of us had things that we were like, we wish this had been different. But, those are minor things.
Yeah, they were almost always not exclusively, but many of them were destination problems, not journey problems. Like the journey was wonderful. I just maybe would have had us arrive at a slightly different place in one or two places.
I think it's funny because most of the criticisms that I've seen are the opposite, where I think that they're like,
Yeah.
People are criticizing things, some of which that I agree with. I think that the writing, parts of it, like I think that I've seen a lot of people criticizing the humor, which I totally agree. It just didn't work. Brandon's humor just doesn't really work for me. And there were definitely points where I was like, that could have been worded better. But I think a lot of people say like, his editing, and I'm like, I think people assume that editing means he should have taken out the things that I don't like. I think maybe people don't know what editors really do. It's totally fair to say this is your least favorite Stormlight book, by the way. Like, no one says this has to be your absolute favorite. I in particular don't usually like the last books in a series. This one happened to really work for me, but I think just a lot of the criticism that I see is like, it was way too long. All right, fine. It's a Stormlight book. Like, what do you like? I mean, okay. Like, and I've seen, yeah, I mean, a lot of the criticisms to me, I'm like, yeah, that's fair, but it's like super, super objective. I mean, subjective. Or it's people who, for whatever reason, don't want to like Brandon.
Yeah. I don't think I'll have an actual ranking for a long time. I did like a little video that had a ranking. But I definitely put Wind and Truth in the middle because it had the word I've tried therapy, and I was like, I can't put any book other than Wind and Truth in the line therapy because it just calls for it.
I just wanted to mention, Cage said, I think the people who didn't like it were expecting more of an ending, which we knew it wasn't going, I'm assuming going into it. Yeah. I think that that's true, that we knew, but yeah, I agree. I heard a lot of people saying like, I didn't like the ending, which by the way is different than saying it's a bad end. Like, you can, like I said, you can not like the book 100%, but I think you still have to be objective and say like what he has done with this story is really incredible, or what he has done with the Cosmere in general. There's no one else doing what he's doing. And at least that has to be appreciated. And I think like just to overall say this was a bad book is kind of reductive. Again, like you can totally say this is your least favorite Stormlight book. You could even say I didn't like the book. But to say like it's terrible, or like I see people using just very like absolutist language when it comes to the book, and I'm like, be a little objective here. Let's calm down and be a little objective here.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, I've read some of the Reddit threads where people talk about it, and I'm just like, I don't see it. I'm not really seeing the problem. I don't see the problem with what you've seen the problem with. So it doesn't mean there aren't good criticisms. I don't necessarily agree that those things drag the book down for me.
I wanted to also point out what WSM Zenial, I hope I'm saying that right, says, my biggest gripe is the extensive mental health retrospective that each character had to do. I kind of agree. That it was a little bit heavy-handed. Like, I think that is Brandon's MO. He really likes to put an emphasis on mental health, which I think is great. And his depictions of things like depression, for sure, are extremely accurate. But I do agree that it felt a little bit heavy-handed at times. And there were certainly times where it felt like we don't need to be reading a psychology book. Like, we all kind of get what you're doing here. You don't need to be that heavy-handed. So I would agree with that. But that being said, that's his choice. So
yeah, I think ironically, while I love chapter 10 for the reasons we've talked about. That is, to me, the best example of Kaladin just being preachy in a way that I didn't like. I didn't mind him in Shinovar like fumbling over himself, being like, well, maybe we should talk about your past question, because he doesn't know what he's doing. Like, if it was different, it would be different for me if it was someone who knew what they were doing and was like, oh, I should, yeah, let me preach at you or whatever. I don't know. The only one that really made me cringe and not like it was the librarian. Like, you should feel bad about treating people this way. You should be better.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, this is something that I have seen a lot in Brandon's books. And again, like now we're all of a sudden being really negative here. Like it's still Stormlight Archive is my favorite series of all time. But I would say that this is something that definitely, like, if you read these books, you know exactly how Brandon thinks about a lot of things. And while he does go to great lengths to represent different types of people, famously, like he himself is religious, but he has an atheist character and stuff like that. But also, when you read his books, you know how he feels about a lot of things. Whereas I'm going to, shout out my boy Pierce Brown here for a second. When you read the Red Rising books, he really, really goes to great lengths to make sure that you don't know at all what he thinks. And he leaves it entirely up to you to decide who's right and who's wrong. And, philosophies, which character you align with in terms of their philosophical points of view. So, yeah, I don't think that Brandon's the most subtle writer, is what I'm trying to say.
Hashtag Lysander did nothing wrong.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Who would you be more upset about getting a redemption arc, Lysander or Moash?
Moash. Without going into spoilers for why, Lysander is he's just a, I can't really say anything. I don't. Lysander is a much more understandable character for me. I get where he's coming from, and he feels more human at this point. Moash doesn't really feel that human to me, like but so yeah, I don't think it's gonna happen. But I would be more okay with a Lysander redemption arc than I would be with Moash.
Okay, okay, that makes. You'd be more okay with Lysander than Moash, right? I did hear that right.
Well, here's the difference. Lysander is a full POV character in the second half of the series. And so you really understand exactly why he's doing everything. And he certainly starts off the series as a good person. The things that he's doing, he has legitimate reasons. This is also because Darrow, who's the main character, the main protagonist, has done some really bad things. Whereas like with Moash and Kaladin, like if you want to use the two of them, Kaladin is a pretty straightforward hero. He doesn't make a lot of questionable decisions in terms of like grand scale. I mean, Darrow makes decisions that get a lot of people killed. And he does really shady stuff. And, maybe he has to do them, but you can see why Lysander would say, this guy is a problem. He needs to be taken out, and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, I think like still not a fan of Lysander, but I understand him more.
Sure. That's fair. And I think there's, it'll be interesting to see how much of a POV shift Moash gets. Because for a while there in Oathbringer, he was getting quite a few chapters. Not like main character status, but certainly almost as many as Szeth had back in Way of Kings. So it'll be interesting.
I definitely, it's an interesting point now that you're bringing it up. I think that if we do get a Moash redemption arc, which I still don't think we will, he needs to become more of a POV character, because at this point, he's so detestable to the audience that I think any redemption is going to feel hollow unless we really, and just saying like, his grandparents died is not enough for me. Like, we're way past the Moash did nothing wrong. I mean, I was not even on that train when he killed Elokar, but we're way, way past that now. And I think that in order for us to have any chance of a redemption, he has to become like a main POV character. I just don't see how it's going to be satisfying any other way, which is part of the reason why I don't think it's going to happen.
It'd be really funny. I don't think it'll happen, but it'd be really funny if our scene that we get as a prologue for every back half book is one that's at the end of the series, and it's like Moash as a savior figure. And it's like, how does he get there? What?
Well, actually, it would be if, like, let's say one of the books was written, if he continues with the same thing that he did in the first half, where each of the epigraphs are like from a book.
Mm-hmm.
If one of the books was written by Moash, and then you find out at the
Yeah.
end that it's Moash, I don't think it's going to happen, but it would be cool. That
That's
would be
one
fun.
that I've seen for a while now is in the back half, meet a character, find out at the end of the book, after you've fallen in love with them, this is Moash. Now, it's going to be a lot harder to do that and hide that it's Moash because of spikes or crystal spikes. But
I think, it's
could
really
still do it.
interesting. The whole idea of the the people who are like set on the Moash redemption arc, I find it so fascinating because this is like so anti my like it's just something that's so not in my view at all. This idea of like redemption being the ultimate storyline. I don't know if it's because like right now redemption arcs are really popular, or but it's like it works when it's Zuko. It works when it's like some of these kind of characters. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work here for me like at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like I was thinking about, as you're talking about, I was thinking about the end of Harry Potter, because we always have to bring up Harry Potter. But at the end of the last book, right? So how does Voldemort have to put back his soul? Would be he would have to feel some remorse. And this is what he says to him. He
Mm.
says, try for some remorse, Riddle. And he can't do it because he's so far gone that the concept is foreign to him. Like it's not even something
Yeah.
that's possible. And I kind of feel like that's where we are with Moash. Like in order for Moash to be redeemed, he would have to feel some sort of remorse, and he just doesn't. Like, and so that means it's just not going to be a satisfying
Yeah.
like arc, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be I mean now that he's able to feel things again, now that odium is not taking away the pain, that'd be the only route, but
Maybe.
it would be a long road. You couldn't just go there. I am loving in the comments, Cage and Leo the Poet are talking about Marsh versus Moash, war versus death.
Like I was like a battle,
Fake
like
Inquisitor. Yeah, like
okay.
Marsh show, Kelsier's like, all right, we got to send in Marsh to go take care of Moash. I could
Yeah,
see
I
that.
mean the thing about that, like it would be cool in just like power wise. The thing about that though is like it could actually be really sad because Marsh didn't do anything wrong. Like Marsh is a victim 100%. You know, and so to see him like, yeah, it would be interesting. I don't think it's gonna happen, but it would be interesting also.
Yeah. Oh, Marsh. I love Marsh. We got a question. What was your gut reaction to the Blackthorn being born? I'll let you go first because you have stronger, less positive thoughts than I do.
Not a fan. Not a fan. I am willing to put my thoughts on hold and see where Brandon goes with it,
Yeah.
but I didn't like it. And I'll tell you also, I think the reason why I didn't like it is because it felt like we did this a lot at the end of the book, where Kaladin dies, but oh, he's not dead. Dalinar dies, but oh, he's not dead. Carbranth is killed. Oh, they're not dead. And so I felt like kill a character and leave that, like let it go. He's just, Brandon does not like to get rid of characters, and so I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what made it worse for me. But I also just don't like the idea of rehashing everything that we've done in the last 5 books between Dalinar and Navani, Adolin and Dalinar, Renarin and Dalinar. Like I just don't want to do that again. It feels like a repeat. So I tell you, I reserve my full ire for
Yeah.
when we get the later books and we see what he does with it. But yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of that.
Are you happier if he is a spren like entity and therefore incapable of change? Like we cannot redeem, we cannot have a character arc for the Blackthorn. It's just the same way that like the Thrill can't be redeemed or whatever.
My problem with that is that then he just turns into like Marvel villain.
Mm,
It's just not interesting.
yeah.
So either you have to, so then what you have to do in order to make it interesting is have the emotional side be put on the other characters. And that's what I don't want to do. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't hate the idea of him being a force that Odium just send or Retribution sends out into the Cosmere. So I mean, I will put my tinfoil hat on the wall that the next time we see him is him attacking Cell in like Elantris 2 or 3. That's when I think we'll see him next. But
That would be my best possible version of it, would be like he's not on Roshar. And it's like a cool Easter egg for, those of us who read the
mhm,
Cosmere, and we're like, oh my God, it's the Blackthorn. Like, oh no, here he comes. It's going to, devastation on Scadrial, on Cell, on Nalthis, wherever we are. But Yeah, it's still not my favorite plotline.
That's fair. I like that I called it because I was like, well, wait, if we can take Bottle Mishram and put them into the spiritual realm, why couldn't we take people out of the spiritual realm? And then we do. And I'm like,
You did call
yes.
it. You did call it. Also, I saw an interesting debate on about Moash again between Lord Loopy and Cage, saying like not everyone is redeemable, and then Cage said I disagree with that generally, but we'll go as far as saying not everyone doesn't need to be redeemed. I kind of agree with both of you. I think that there's a difference between like the philosoph. We've talked about this a lot, but like there's a difference between the moral stand, like meaning if you believe in redemption, then you have to believe in it for everybody. That being said, I think that there are some people who like they are redeemable by God if that's something that you believe in, but they have done so much wrong to people that there is very little they could do to ever fully redeem themselves, and maybe their souls are so stained that like I don't know if it would be even ever be possible. But I think more so when we're talking about a book, whether or not it would be satisfying is really the question.
Yes. That's a good phrase. Satisfying arcs.
Yeah.
Tree Boy says, isn't Galadon one of Odium's agent world hoppers? Galadon, Demu, and Bayonne are 3 world hoppers for the 17th shard. And we know almost nothing beyond Frost seems to be the head of their organization / be in charge of them in some way. And they were there looking for Hoyd. So Galadon would not be one of Odium's. As of right now, we don't know of any world hoppers for Odium. We know the Ghostbloods have some world hoppers, and that's really the only world. And the 17th Shard has world hoppers. Yes, Leo the Poet, Demu is from Scadrial. Thinker is Demu. Thinker? Yeah, Thinker is Demu. Grump is... I always forget which one is which. But if you go back to the first interlude of The Way of Kings, when the 3 people are in the Pure Lake, the person thinks they're using code names, but their code names are like Temu and Galaton and Bayo or whatever. And so like they're not code names; they're their actual names. So yeah.
What about Axendweth?
It's a good question. It's fair. The Terracemen people are very confusing to me as to like who is doing what and why, and
I don't like seeing evil Terracemen.
Right?
No.
Yeah. It is unclear who she's there for. Like she could be a ghost blood, she could be her own entity. It is completely up in the air.
Is she not in the chapter with Gavilar in one of the prologues?
She is. Yeah, she's there at the feast. Well, okay, this is fair. I mean, I probably... Okay, so Axendwith was working with Ulim at one point.
Right.
Yeah. And then Axendwith had been discovered by a different agent working for a different entity. That agent turned Gavilar against her, and then she fled Roshar, but apparently returned at some point to capture Zyle / Vasher.
I mean, also, like, I'm just looking at Cage's question, which is like timeline wise, how is she a full feruchemist? And I'm trying to think, are there full feruchemists or full like pure blood Terracemen in Era 2? I feel like
none that we know of.
Okay. So then she's right.
Yeah, she could be very old. She could have some kind of longevity going on. Maybe the full Terrasborn moved to Silverlight. And so like they aren't, because we know that the mask Yatil is not from Southern Scadrial currently. Like they moved to Silverlight. They're descended from Southern Scadrians. Right. So yeah. It's weird. Let's see. We're kind of somewhat sort of... Oh, hi, Enrique. Hopefully you're gone. Enrique came to say hi, but he's on the
Yeah.
interludes after day 3. Gosh, okay. We're sort of kind of adjacent to Dalinar. Anything we want to talk about with Dalinar? We can go back. We kind of did the. We can do Dalinar and then talk about Szeth, and then.
I mean, honestly, I don't have a ton of thoughts about Dalinar himself, just because like the Dalinar chapters were much more focused on the lore and the history of Roshar, all of which was really interesting, but it didn't really have a ton. And this is going back to what we talked about with some of the criticisms. I definitely saw some people saying Dalinar didn't really get an arc. I kind of agree. It just didn't bother me that much, but I loved as much as I've complained about some of the stuff surrounding Downer and the ending. I did really love him protecting Gavinor. Yeah. There was a lot of stuff that I did really like. So,
yeah, I think that's fair. I think him wrestling with the Stormfather and wrestling with figuring out the past was really interesting, and I definitely get the criticism. Like I think Josh has a similar criticism that it feels MacGuffin-y. It feels like go from point to point to point to point. But at the same time, I felt like for Kaladin and for Dalinar, he'd done so much work with their arcs up to this point that I was okay then just reaping the fruit of having had those character arcs so well done. So
I also
didn't bother me too much. Go ahead.
I also, the scene where he sees Evie's death was gut wrenching.
Yes.
We haven't really talked about that, but when I realized what was happening, I was like, oh God, no. Like it was really hard to watch, especially since we know all of the work that Dalinar has done around all of this, to then have to be forced to witness it, and to see Evie being like, no, my husband's gonna come, is just brutal. I mean, similar with Navani watching Elikar's death, but at least that she has had some closure. So or I guess Dalinar has too, but just the gut punch of the Evie scene really was. I thought a great scene for Dalinar.
Yeah, I mean, it was a wonderful moment for Dalinar to get to rewrite his own history. Probably, I would imagine, informed by like some trauma therapy research, because that's kind of a trauma therapy thing, is to like go back to your worst moment and be like, no, what if you were there, and what if you could like protect yourself or change things. And I mean, it is unfortunately what gives rise to the Blackthorn possibility, because he goes up and is like, no, we're not going to do this, we're going to save the city. And it's like, oh yeah, we can do better, even though like bad stuff's happening. I liked that a lot, the idea that he realized that it's even more heart-wrenching, because then he's realizing, oh, I could have still done better even after I learned that Evie was dead. Like I still could have turned things around, even though it wouldn't have been perfect. It would have been better than what I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And absolutely realizing the Sunmaker's gambit of turning Taravan, like knowing Taravangian. He's like, I've been played this whole book, but I'm going to play you because I know you can't ignore this power, and you're going to take it up. And now the whole Cosmere is going to be looking at you, bud.
Yeah. I mean, I think like this is sort of one of the most interesting takeaways from the book in general is like, did Dalinar do the right thing? Like he, maybe did the right thing for Roshar, but he put the Cosmere into, jeopardy. But at the same time, I mean, I think it'll work out okay for us, the reader, but it's a big risk that he's taking.
Yeah.
And it's also going to destroy his own legacy, like I think Wit says, I'm going to make sure that people know what Dalinar did and all that, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I think when I take Dalinar's assessment correctly, which is if he doesn't do it, then Odium gets 1,000 years to prepare to take on the Cosmere in peace, because he knows that none of the other shards are going to step in. And I mean, I really, really appreciated the realization of that's 1,000 years of fused that aren't crazy. That's 1,000 years of converting radiance over to his cause. That's, I mean, the power level he would be at after 1,000 years is unimaginable. So I think it was the best thing possible for the Cosmere. because otherwise Odium just comes out in 1,000 years or whenever he's ready and just starts steamrolling the galaxy.
Well,
That'd be
if he had
awful.
killed Gavinor, so then Odium
Hmm.
would have been weakened. Like he would have had to take all of, he would have had to take all of his fused, and he would have been
Yeah, he wouldn't be able to control the fuse though. He'd just be limited to Thalen. I mean, he'd have a lot of land still. He'd have Thalena. He'd have anyone that had agreed. Right. That was the danger of if
right.
you agree to contract yourself to Odium, you don't win if he loses the contest anymore because you've already given your land to Odium.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, I think
genius
he made
move.
the right decision, but from the viewpoint of maybe the rest of the Cosmere,
I think they'd be upset in the moment, but I
yeah,
think if you explained it to Sazed, he'd be like, "Oh, wait, yeah, I'd much rather fight him, you know, 20 years from now than 1,000 when he's had the chance to fully level up." And we're all thinking like, "Oh, we're all fine. He's contained." And like, no, no, he's not.
yeah. I wonder how Kelsier's going to react.
Yeah, he doesn't love threats to Scadrial. That's fair.
He's also going to be like, "Didn't we already do this? Didn't I already have to deal with a genocidal god?"
You know, yeah. I mean, there's a reason one of the main plot lines that kind of comes up over and over is let's kill God.
Mhm.
All the way back to Dragonsteel.
Yeah.
What about Szeth? Anything we want to say about Szeth tonight?
Oh boy. I mean, what I don't remember what we've said or what we haven't said. I mean, Zeth had, I think, the second best arc in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Any thoughts?
So we've talked about Molly. We've talked about him finding the sheep before.
Mhm.
Um, I don't remember if we've talked about fully the parallel I see between like Lirin and Naturo, how that's really an interesting parallel that Brandon created. Um, because I just think it's one of the more interesting comparisons. Because like, what if Lirin goes with Kaladin and goes with Tien and says, "Hey, Amaram, we're the surgeons. Like, you need to keep the three of us off the front lines because we're going to keep everybody safe." Um, I don't know.
Yeah, it is really interesting. It's there sort of is a I think a conversation about like who's the worst father in the Cosmere. But I'm certainly not going to put Naturo on that list. But I think that both he and Liren have some interesting parental choices, I guess we'll say. And
Mm-hmm.
while I'm like, I think that like Liren made a lot of mistakes. I've seen a lot of people praising Naturo, and I don't know if he deserves the fulsome praise that he's been receiving. I think that like there certainly are things about him that are wonderful, and I think that when you're reading it, it's really nice to see a father just giving unconditional love to his children, which is not something that we get to see all that often in the Cosmere. But at the same time, I think that Naturo's story kind of shows how damaging it can be to just unconditionally and every other child. Um,
Well, we lost you
I
there for a second.
my
What I heard
oh,
was how damaging it can be to stop.
unconditionally like the fact that he to unconditionally love one child.
Sure.
And I'll say so. My brother was diagnosed with cancer when he was 13, and when something like that happens, the entire family's focus goes on that child because it has to, right? Like you're dealing suddenly with like a really serious situation. By the way, thank God he's fine. Like he's now 20 and he's been cancer free, thank God. But it was, it was a difficult, very difficult time period, and like the entire family goes, just everything is focused on that kid and making sure that he is 100% okay, and like just everything. And that's sort of where what I was, maybe that's sort of what I was feeling when I was reading those chapters, is that Naturo is like, we're going to just put everything aside and put everything onto this one kid. And what can happen a lot of times in these situations is marriages fall apart, other children feel like they've been abandoned, and it's like, yeah, you took care of this one kid, but the rest of the family suffered, and that's not necessarily a good thing either. And that's sort of,
Yeah.
maybe that's what I was drawing from.
Yeah.
I mean, thank God my family came out in one piece, and we were all, he's, my brother's the youngest, and so we were all adults by the time this happened. And so, but there certainly was a lot of strain, and there certainly was a lot of
Sure.
like,
Sure.
tension, and it's really hard, and you're also like, you're putting your own, feelings aside because you have to take care of this child who's going through something really
Hmm.
scary. And, so then afterwards you kind of feel like you don't really know how to pick up the pieces. And I don't know, maybe that's why I felt so strongly about this point about Naturo. Um,
Yeah.
but I do think that he sacrificed his marriage and his other child, his daughter, for Szeth. And that's kind of problematic.
And in some ways, not even for Szeth, but like for himself. There's this idea of, because that's what I think is really tricky. We have a similar situation in our life with my oldest son. That's not cancer, but it was a situation that really did divide the family, and I just had to kind of go into sole caregiver mode for him and my wife for our other kids, and um, it it's kind of that Kaladin mindset of like, oh, I need to accept there are times where you have to step back and let someone else or something else step in. Um, Naturo isn't healthy with it. I mean, it even goes all the way back to when he's like, "No, Szeth, you decide. I'm not going to tell you what we should do here." It's like, "No, you're the parent. Like you have to make hard decisions. You cannot look to this child to tell you what's right and what's wrong." Um, and it's not. It didn't help Szeth. It made Szeth feel better, certainly, but it didn't. You know. Oh,
Yeah, I mean, we
yeah.
talked about that a lot when we were doing the preview chapters. That one, the first Szeth backstory chapter, we talked about that for like a long time, about the idea of, like you want. I'm not a parent, but you always want to give. I'm a teacher, and you always want to give kids choices, right? You want to let kids make choices. You want to let kids just,
Yeah.
make choices. That's what helps them grow, and all of these, and it's wonderful. But if the choices that you're giving them are ones that lead to them feeling a deep sense of insecurity in the world, those are not the best choices,
Yeah.
to give to kids. And if they feel unsafe, like if the world feels unsafe to them because my parents are asking me to make a decision that's not, something that a child should have to decide, that's also like that. That's what we talked about when we talked about Naturo and his wife
Yeah.
saying like, this is the religion that you have been brought up with, and this is the mythology, and this is the rules of your entire life. Now you decide whether or not we as a family should break them, is just so damaging mentally to a child.
Yeah.
Um,
Because
it's
by the
yeah,
way, he made the decision. He was like, "We should leave," and then they're like, "Are you sure?
right.
Are you super duper sure? We'll respect your decision, but are you triple duper sure?" Like that's the
Yeah,
problem. Is if he hadn't made a decision yet, and they said, "Hey Szeth, what do you think we should do?" and he said, "Oh, we should leave." Then yeah, like we're done. Like we move on. But they put so much pressure on that moment after he'd already made it clear what he thought they should do.
right. Because Szeth himself is a very, very principled person, right? We see this as
Yes.
him as an adult, right? The fact that he sticks with the oath stone, like his worldview is extremely rigid,
Yes.
and the fact that they and I think that was even more damaging to Szeth because his worldview is so rigid.
Yeah.
When they said to him like, "You make the decision. Either we all have to uproot and leave our home and leave our lifestyle and go live, or we could just stay here and forget this all ever happened." Like it's like it creates a really unsafe environment for a
Yeah.
kid.
And all the more tragic because if they had uprooted, they would have been more careful in leaving. They would have not missed Molly. Szeth would not have returned. He probably almost he super wouldn't have returned if he thought it was a place of like holiness or whatever. And he wouldn't have felt the need to like go do the right thing even though it's hard. And then they don't like none of Szeth's backstory stuff happens.
Yeah. I mean, well, we don't know. We don't know what would have happened, but yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I think just like in general, it's I don't know what to make of it, of the people be because I haven't seen a lot of people criticizing the Turo, and I kind of wish there were more people that were pointing out, some of these, again, not to say he's not, because I think because when I was posting about this on Instagram, and somebody said like Naturo is the best dad in the Cosmere, and I was like, well, hold on a second.
No, he is the dad that makes you feel the best, probably. Oh no,
Okay, I
Shandel,
still
I
think
lost you again.
oh,
You're back now. I don't know what happened.
okay.
It was weird.
I think that like maybe Sereni's father has the title of best father in the Cosmere, but like yeah, and they were like, oh, so who do you think it is, Straff Venture? And I'm like, let's not be ridiculous, but that doesn't mean that we can't still.
That's funny. That's funny. Straff.
It's like,
Oh, yeah. Tress's dad, I think, probably wins the award for like best/least problematic father.
what does he do?
He
I
helps.
don't remember.
He goes to the bar and like puts himself out there to help make her dream come true.
Okay.
And
I mean, he's
then she
barely
comes to him and
but
is like, "I want to go after Charlie," and he's like, "Yeah, I will help you go leave this island and find
yeah.
your bow."
Uh-huh.
Jason
I
says
still
hi. Hi, Jason.
yeah.
Oh man, Kelsier's the best dad.
There's an argument for that, I will say. Like in terms of like adopted dad.
Yeah, for Spook and for Vin, he does a great
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. I think there's an argument there.
Yeah, this guy says, "How did you feel about Taln going full Doomslayer?" I loved it.
Loved it.
The
It was cool.
only
It
thing
was
that would
really
have made
cool.
it better is if we got to actually see it.
I think that yeah, I do agree that like it was sort of like, yeah, Talon's gonna do cool stuff, and now it's all over. We didn't get to see Talon do all the cool stuff, but at the same time, we will see Talon do cool stuff. Like we
Yes.
know that he'll be back. So
After his time in Super Happy Sleepy Town.
mhm. He could use it. Poor guy.
Jason says, "If TikTok goes away, will you move to YouTube or something?" We've
Or
talked
something.
about that. Possibly TikTok, possibly Instagram, possibly YouTube. We'll figure out like what works the best. If it somehow is banned and unusable by next Sunday, which possibly it will be, who knows? Government stuff, I don't know. We will post stuff over on Instagram and probably start with Instagram and go from there.
Yeah, the biggest problem with doing with Instagram is that they don't have the possibility. At least I don't think they do, of like putting up like a spoiler warning, and so that may be an issue. But yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, Instagram makes
I can just make a banner that's like behind me that's like spoilers, like old fashioned image.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cage says maybe do YouTube. I'm not opposed to it. I just don't. The harder thing is like I don't know that y'all are connected to the YouTube, and so like, would you even get a notification that happened, or like how do me and Shandel go live at the same? We'll figure that out.
I think there are ways to do it. I think the reason why I think Instagram makes sense, at least for me, is because I have already following on Instagram, so we have like a bit of a built-in. Hopefully fan base, but I think, we'll have to play around with it. Maybe we'll try both and see how it goes. So yeah, I mean, but guys, I know a lot of people don't like Instagram, but come on in. The water's fine.
You can use it just for this. It's very
very
nice, very easy. I've come to several of Shandel's lives on Instagram. They're always a good time, always fun.
Yeah.
And I always, however I can get these recorded, I'll toss them up on YouTube as well. So be a fun way to do that. Szeth adjacent. Let me finish Naturo. Yeah, I think specifically by the end. Oh, thanks, Leo. He said we'll support you guys wherever you go.
Oh,
that's rock.
thanks.
You rock. I don't know, especially towards the end when Naturo and Szeth are talking after he's met the voice. And Naturo's just like, well, I followed you because I figured you were going to tell me what truth was. And it's like, I think at that point, it's somewhat healthy. It's that he did it to him as a kid as well, right? Like, it's fine if you see your son rise to adulthood and you realize like, oh, you've got this more figured out than I do. Like, let me learn from you. I think that's fine. It's when he's not an adult and he's parentifying the child. probably because he doesn't have a healthy adult sense of self, like as evidenced by the way that he doesn't exist as his own person. He exists through his son and only by helping his son.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not good. Like, that's not healthy for anybody.
No, it's really weird. Also, it's sort of like you like almost as if he's treating him as like a prophet of some sort, where it's like I expected you. Why would you expect a 13-year-old to have answers about anything? Like why? It's very weird.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sad. I think that like that was one of the most heartbreaking things at the end is when Szeth has to let go of his father and his sister. And there's also a scene earlier on in the book. I mean, in one of the earlier flashbacks where he's talking to his sister, and she's just like, you know she's so
Oh.
bitter about what
Oh, absolutely. Of course she is.
yeah, for good reason. But and that for me was really the point where I was like, yeah, Naturo just abandoned her. Like, she just it didn't matter at all what she wanted. um yeah, and so it's a very sad story.
Yeah.
The
And the
Zeth story.
fact that, I think the other thing that really cinches it is that he didn't stand up to Ishar. Like, Naturo saw the same information as Szeth and was like, "Nah, I'm in a relationship with this woman, so I'm just gonna trust that this voice that is very clearly evil. Like, good people don't nail Spren to walls. Like, what?
Yeah, might have been a red flag.
We got this question a while back, and I don't remember if it was this guy or somebody else, but somebody was asking, does Szeth know Kaladin's a herald? I answered in the chat, but his wife seems to think Kaladin died and has no idea what he accomplished.
Yeah.
So as of the 6 to 7 years after Wind and Truth, whenever this book Wind and Truth gets written, no one knows what Kaladin did. And so we're just kind of left with, some people probably would guess, I would imagine a Yasna would go, wait, Ishar was planning to make someone a herald, and Szeth didn't become a herald, and Kaladin disappeared. Non-zero
Well,
chance. Go ahead.
I mean, Kaladin didn't disappear. He was buried.
Sure.
So
His body died, right? But like, again, Leo the poet, Bridge 4 is going to be waiting at that chasm. Bridge 4 is going to be sure he's a herald. Lopin will be like, Goncho, yeah, sure, he's dead, sure, yeah.
I think there's a possibility we could see some sort of like Kaladin worship as well. This idea of like a martyr, kind of thing. But yeah, and I think as far as like on within the world, I think they assume he's dead. I mean, Szeth wakes up and finds Kaladin with a hole through his chest, and I mean that's pretty dead.
Pretty dead.
So and then buries him. Of course, though, in the Cosmere, that's a minor thing.
Yeah. Cage. People, it's still unclear to me. Oh wait, which are you thinking? The Sig thinking he's Cal, thinking it can't be Cal, or are you thinking men become gods on your planet? I'm not sure which one you're thinking about. My thought is that right now it's consistent with Sigzil never hearing anything more about Roshar or learning everything that's happened. Like, you can read Sunlit Man and say, oh, he just figures Kaladin couldn't possibly be on a random planet after he disappeared or after he went to Shinovar. Like, he doesn't even have to know that Kaladin's supposed to be dead for that to be like, wait, Kaladin, it can't be you, because like I'm on Canticle, millions of miles away from Roshar. Like, that's consistent. Or he could believe Kaladin's dead, or he could believe Kaladin's a herald. Like, that scene was written very ambiguously to be consistent with all possible understandings of what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, Sigzil leaves way before anybody on that side of the planet would have heard about what happened to Kaladin, because it wasn't huge news. It was sort of just, it's a very small event that happens all the way on the other side of the world. So I don't think, I mean, there's a possibility that Sigzil has learned about things on what happened on Roshar, but I think it was more, when he says like Cal, oh no, it can't be Cal. I think it's more just the fact that like, how could he have gotten off of Roshar?
I mean, it would be like if I saw someone that looked like you at a grocery store here. I'd be like, Shandel? It can't be Shandel. Like, like I know that you're in Maryland. Like, it doesn't mean that you're dead or that you're a herald. It just means you shouldn't be right here in front of me based on my understanding of how like reality and physics works. Um, so it's one of the, but it also is the kind of thing you would say if you thought you saw someone who was dead. It's the kind, it's so consistent.
Right.
Combat Wombat says, do you think he ever came back after joining the caravan? I think it's consistent. Like, there's some words of Brandon out there that imply he has to summon his shard plate on Roshar in order for it to be functional. I don't know if that's still true after Cultivation left and changed the rules about Spren. Who knows? I think it's consistent with both possibilities. And, I always chuckle when people on Reddit are like, well, obviously this or obviously that. And I'm like, guys, there's a lot of like wiggle room. Brandon leaves so much room for him to be like, oh, well, this is how this works in this way. And so then, it's different here. Like, the Night Brigade doesn't know about him yet. So he's not even on the run at this point. And presumably he's not on the run until he gives away the Dawn Shard to somebody else, because he's just the chain in the command.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who says like, for sure this is happening, I don't know. Don't believe them. There's always wiggle room for new things to happen. There's always another secret.
Always another secret. Shandel, I've not read Sunlit Man yet, post Wind and Truth. Jason says, have you gone back and reread Sunlit Man?
I have not. I should, because there's a lot of like implications. Also, just the whole idea of like rereading it now, knowing who Ox is, I think is going to be really interesting. But I haven't yet.
Someone said the Cal and Shallan ship red herring, which made me think about the Shauna red herring, which was not a red herring. It was her red hair, and it was deleted. We were all right. It was deleted because it drew too much attention to Shauna Rock too early, and he wanted it to wait a little bit longer.
You could say it was a red herring.
But I did this because, have you heard the new ship theory that isn't Kaladin Sill?
Is this the Kaladin Chanarach theory? This is just gross on so many levels. I hate it even more that like no.
I'm with you.
No.
I'm with you. I hate it more
than what's wrong with people.
Any other one. Okay, I will say, now that Kaladin's a herald, I think we can put to death him and that girl from his past getting back together.
Yeah. I really thought she was going to show up.
I thought so too. I mean, Leo, you're not wrong. I think Brandon's even said that Adolin and Shallan would be down, but that Kaladin's as much of a prude as he is, and so it wouldn't work out.
I mean, to be fair, like in the beginning of the book, Shallan is jealous because Kaladin gives Adolin a longer hug than hers. Yes, so, we're not too far off.
It's so great.
I have to jump off for 1 second, but I'll be right back in a...
Oh, I was actually going to do the same thing, so perfect.
Oh, okay. So hold on 1 second.
Amuse yourselves, everyone.
Wait, sorry, Combat Wombat. When did Kaladin get a sword? He wore Kaladin's sword at... I don't remember that part. Oh, Kaladin gave it. I thought you meant like it was Kaladin's sword. And I was like, wait, Kaladin doesn't have a sword. Yes. Of course.
Oh, the wedding gift, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they're mentioning the fact that Adolin was wearing Kaladin's sword. So I was confused by that, but I figured it out.
Yeah, that was a sweet little piece.
I mean, I think like
Oh,
Sorry.
I
Yeah.
just saw a question about story deck cards. I was going to say, Jason, I haven't heard anything more about them. I think the word is at some point, but Brandon's been trying to figure out how he feels about all of that also.
Mhm. I think just like talking about the shipping, can we officially say Sylvan is a thing, or are we still not there yet?
I'm there. I was there
I'm there
at the
too.
dancing scene. Like when he's focusing on her face and he's thinking, what would make me happy to dance with Syl? I'm like, all right, we're done. It doesn't, whether they ever have like, it doesn't matter whether they do anything on screen. Like I don't need them to kiss or like
I do.
have spren babies or something. They are a thing and we're good. Like it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of on the Sillidan train way back in Oathbringer already. Like I thought
Mm,
like when they're sitting on the shores of Shadesmar
yeah,
and she like
it's a good
leans
one.
her head against his shoulder, that's a pretty like that's not like I mean that to me was like, already indications of things. Chapter 10 aside, I'm a huge fan of Sillidan. Like I've always been kind of on the Sillidan train. So
Yeah.
yeah, like I said this before, but like I had I've done a painting already of the Sillidan dance, and I had a bunch of people commenting, being like, I didn't see it as romantic as like this, and I was like, did you read the scene? I mean, it was pretty. He says like he says all he wants to do in life at that moment is to dance with Syl. He doesn't say like I want to like train with my spear, or he says I want to dance with Syl. I mean, it's not that subtle.
Yeah, the other quote that really stuck out to me in that section was just how he stares at her face. To me, that was the kiss. Like if I think that it would have been distracting to try to take them suddenly. Like there was no time in this book to
No.
suddenly introduce romance and like sexual activity between them. Like no way.
Yeah, and
But
it's still a bit
you
early for
know,
that. Like it's
but you
yeah,
can still have tension, you can still have romance, without making it like physical intimacy,
yeah.
type things.
I mean, Combat Wombat, he doesn't really have a physical form now either,
Yeah,
which
they
is
they
yeah.
functionally
So
are the same substance at this point.
yeah, yeah. But I agree. Like if you're talking about like pre-Kaladin becoming a herald, then she does become much more physical in the later books. But still, yeah, I agree. I think like it would have been way, way, way too fast to be like all of a sudden they're in like an intense physical relationship. But I think in the future we'll see more hints of it.
My brain's going all sorts of crazy places
Oh.
with Notum being able to wear shard plate, which then means basically you can like walk around physically with a like physical form, right? I mean, Syl could embody Kaladin's shard plate and like walk around next to him and such. Interesting.
I mean, also like Combat Wombat 66, like she did have physical form in Shadesmar, um,
Yeah.
which is not the same thing as the spiritual realm, but
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at the very end, Kalek sees her there, and Renarin sees her there in the vision. So there's something of appearance at minimum,
yeah.
in the super happy sleepy town. But um, TM, TM pending. Um, I'm so happy for them with that. Like the idea that they get that time of peace, Adolin gets that time of peace, minus his wife and his child, but
I was
still,
gonna say.
yeah. Do heralds need shard plate? No, but I'm sure it doesn't hurt. I mean, if they die, presumably it's not a fun experience to go back to Braze and then come back again. But I wouldn't be shocked if they found a way to limit that. At minimum, we know that they have swords that can kill heralds forever, and so we don't want anti stormlight blades killing our heralds. Ugh.
Oh, bad. Yeah, I mean, I think also like the we were talking about with Syl and Kaladin. That first of all, the dance scene is like one of my favorite like moments in the Cosmere. But so much of I think Kaladin's story was really nice for it being just like kind of like soft and sweet and quiet. Like we've had a lot of like intense drama scenes with Kaladin. It was really nice to see him and Syl just have like
Yeah.
happy time.
Yeah, and they got to help, and they got to be
Yeah.
the people who help other people instead of constantly needing, to be healed and saved and all that. How does your friend feel about your explanation of what to think about this book? Because I've noticed you've been radio silent about how that conversation went / will go /
I did speak to her. She was so here's what so
that is the best start I've ever heard to a story. I did
I did
speak to
speak
her.
to and I was like, okay. So she asked me she was asking me about the book, and I was like,
Yeah.
look, if you are going into this expecting this to be Kaladin's book, then it's not. You have to just accept that. I think what she said at the end was what she was worried about was that Kaladin was not going to be consequential in this book, and that there was going to be some sort of big Sanderlanche where everybody's coming in to fight the bad guy and he isn't there. And I was like, that's not what happens. And she was also kind of like, Kaladin's just going to go off and be a therapist. And I was like, no, but so she said she's going to try it.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I did say it. I was like, look, you have to just go into this acknowledging that like the book is what the book is. Don't put your own expectations on it and just enjoy the ride. But I have no idea what she's going to think about it. She's very attached to Kaladin, so I don't know how she's going to feel about all that stuff. But I did say, I was like, look, this isn't Kaladin's book. We had a lot of books that were really focused on Kaladin. This is Adolin's book. This is Szeth's book. You just have to go with it.
Combat Wombat and Cage both making great points. This is Adolin's book first and foremost, which is wonderful because he's been kind of this tertiary rising character that is so important and so pivotal, but has always been like on the outskirts of activity. Rhythm of War, he really got to be in the forefront for the trial, but I mean, he got his own pillar of the book. I mean, Azimir is. I think we've said this before, I think if you took Azimir out of the book, I don't like the book nearly as much. I don't know what you put in it instead, but like if you didn't have that story, I would have lost a lot of my enjoyable moments and it would have lost its forward momentum.
Yeah, I mean, I think Adolin's arc in general is so amazing. We've talked about it a lot, but Adolin's my favorite character, so I was really, really happy. But it was also just like a really nice, like full through line of an arc from like book 1 to book 5 where you really get to see this like very full arc, but at the same time within the book it was also a really nice arc. And I think even the people who've been critical of the book have all said this was like Adolin's arc was phenomenal. So
there was somebody that was like, well, the common people just didn't get to do enough in this book, and I'm like, did you read the Azimir plotline? Like that's what that was.
Yeah
That's the whole point.
Yep.
I did read a really interesting theory about the Azish plotline and how maybe the fourth way to win, because in Towers it talks about how there's like 3 ways to win, but then there's also a fourth secret way to win, and they ended up basically saying like the fourth way is when you're lucky and your men fight really well for you, and then that like changes the day or whatever. But somebody was coming with a really interesting theory that at one point it was because what Adolin says about it is it favors people like Dalinar, and he's like unhappy about it. And so then you like think about, okay, what is the thing that favors Dalinar? It's doing something evil, dishonorable, like to your rifts, I'm just gonna punch Elokar in the face until he submits, that kind of thing. And that kind of would have been the metaphor of the burning oil, right? Like it's kind of the last ditch thing. And it would have been interesting to have Adolin decide either not to to think more about that rift moment when he's choosing to burn the oil, or if he had to choose to burn the oil rather than Azir doing it. Because that's kind of what Dalinar does at the end with Retribution. He breaks the game, he flips the table, he does the dishonorable thing, but was really the most honorable thing he could do in that moment. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think Adolin's more like his dad than he would want to admit.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. And I think like also that was one of the parts where I was like, I knew that they weren't going to have a scene where they reconciled. But it was sad that they didn't really get a full.
He sent his.
No.
He sent his feeling of apology across the emotional void.
That helps, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All of Adelyn's trauma is just gone.
Yeah, it's all gone now.
All gone now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually have to jump off in like a minute or two, so
Okay,
we'll just take the last.
that's perfect timing for me as well. So now is that so you can go start your own rival Instagram live, Shandel, like you did last week? We hop off and I'm like, wait, what is this notification?
What
Shandel
is
has
this
gone live
notification?
on Instagram. What is
It's
happening
really
here?
well. It's really first of all, we were finished last week. I didn't say I didn't know, but I sometimes over on Instagram I just want to schmooze with people and just ramble
Yeah. No,
thoughts
you don't
endlessly.
have to explain yourself for the record. It
But
was
yeah,
just
no,
very
actually,
funny that we were like, all right, night, everybody. And then I get a notification like 2 minutes later. Shandel just went live on Instagram. You should check it out.
yeah. Well, I didn't have enough. Like, I guess talk. I needed to like talk more, but
It's a lot. There's a lot to talk about.
yeah. I mean, yeah. So we got it. We
As
have a lot.
evidenced by the fact that we've now talked for 4.5 hours ish about this book, and I still feel like there's so many things that we haven't even touched on.
I know. I mean, we haven't talked about like any of the Tanavast chapters. I think. Have
I
we?
need to reread through those. Those are
Yeah, me too. I was like, before we get into any of that, I have to like reread all of it. We haven't talked about. I mean, we barely talked about
the
Navani. We haven't.
interludes. Yeah, Leo the Poet has a good point. We could spend next week just talking about the interludes.
We haven't even talked. We haven't really talked about Renarin or Relaine. We've barely talked
Yes,
about
that's
Delan.
yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and change this because it should remember my words here. Let's see. Aspirationally, we'll say. Now we might not be on TikTok, so it might not matter that I'm doing it.
Well, yeah. I mean,
But
I don't know. I think it seems like
interludes.
everybody has different theories as to what's going to happen, but
Yeah.
well, I'll just have to wait and see.
Good old Tanner's past.
Mm-hmm.
So funny.
We've talked a little bit about Nightblood, but we can talk a lot more about Nightblood.
I love Nightblood. If you took Adolin and Nightblood out of this book, I'd be done. I'd be like, whatever. All right. I mean, I still would have enjoyed the past stuff. Don't get me wrong. Like, it would have been fine. But, man, Nightblood's rule. I mean, I almost every time. But Yumi's our world, our rules. Rule number 1: I am not a thing. I don't have to kill if I don't want to. Like, it makes me so happy because that it was in day 2 of this book that I made the TikTok where I was like, oh my gosh, guys, Szeth and Nightblood are the same person. They both yeah. It's so good. So good. All right. Until next week, when we talk about interludes, Renarin, and maybe some Tanavast, and we'll post on all the socials about where we're going to be. If it's not here, if it's here, we'll just be here. But
and both of us had the same. Our usernames are the same here and Instagram.
Yes,
where you'll find me mostly, so you can always check out there.
Sounds good. Good night, everybody.
Bye.